meeting this morning. And I'm going to start and say good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Look forward to seeing you at the next meeting in person back at the Collaboratory Center at DU. It's a lot of fun. It's super interactive and a great atmosphere. So looking forward to doing that again. Also want to thank DU for hosting our meeting. And with that, I am going to start the agenda. Just for a quick note for anyone new to the EEBC, the EEBC is a trade member organization. We represent the entire supply chain of energy efficiency, now BE, and DR, all the pieces that we work on in our industry and in the field to deliver products and services. And we are a statewide organization here in Colorado. So we're excited that everyone's here. Our theme today is gearing up for 2024 and what's trending. And I'm Patricia Rothwell, the Executive Director of the EEBC. And we also have on the phone, in the meeting, Pete Guthrie from DU, who's running the meeting, Deb Goodman, who does our membership relations, and Stephanie Lupinski, marketing communications. When we get further into the meeting, just wanted to let you know that when we take questions and Q&A, we're asking that you can either raise your hand, at the bottom of the screen under reactions, and ask your question directly, or you could use chat, and Deb and Stephanie will be watching that to bring those questions forward. Other than that, format-wise, we're going to kick it off. We're talking about regulatory affairs first, and looking at what's happening in Denver, and then also with Colorado Energy Office in terms of rebates, what to expect, and any changes coming this next year. Then we're going to talk about the 2024-26 DSM plan that was filed and some of the things that EEBC is doing to help you guys look into that and be ready in your action groups to bring your ideas and recommendations. And then we'll go into our panel discussion and Q&A, which is a trending topic, and looking at the connection of the weatherization, insulation, air sealing, energy auditors, and heat pumps in the marketplace, and where the opportunities are for our businesses with those, growing changes with beneficial electrification. So with that, I'd like to first introduce Colorado Energy Office, Chad Weichel. He's a Climate Workforce Development Manager. And Chad, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Patricia. I don't have to go through my intro, and I know we've got a stacked agenda, so I'll jump right into it. If you want to go ahead and advance the slides. One more. Okay, we're going to talk about these programs. So the two rebate programs and the training program associated with the rebate programs. A lot of this information, I believe most of you have heard before, but we do have some updates. I wanted to give you the very latest update, and of course, more details to come. Next slide. So first off, the training program. So associated with these two rebate programs, the Department of Energy knows that we need to equip contractors with heat pump training, among other trainings, to be able to fully utilize these rebate programs. So it's called the Training for Residential Energy Contractors. It used to be called the Contractor Training Grant, if you heard of that before. It's a formula grant. Colorado will receive $2.5 million. What we're looking to do is really kind of two goals with that. One is to upskill the existing workforce. So hook up contractors with heat pump training, predominantly heat pump training. There's other trainings that will be available with this, energy efficiency training as well. But we need to upskill the current workforce. So that means making these trainings either low cost or free, and then also looking to incentivize these trainings. So paying contractors back for taking time off of work to get to these trainings. The other goal will be to attract new HVAC workers to the industry, right? So we need to do two things. We need to upskill the current workforce, and we need to attract new workers. We know that. So that will be working with existing workforce development pipelines and listening to their needs and finding out what we need to do to scale up their operations. For example, we talked to one partner in the career tech ed space, and they don't need infrastructure, they don't need equipment. What they really need is help with recruiting HVAC students. So we'll work with them to provide them resources to do just that. That grant application is due at the end of January, and we expect funds to be rolling out summertime of 24 or so. Next slide. So let's talk about the rebate programs. We call them the Homes and HERA rebate programs. So approximately $140 million of rebates, one to make homes more energy efficient, the other to provide more electrification in homes. Funds aren't available yet. We expect the funds to be available until 2031. That's the period of performance. Next slide, please. So one really important piece, the qualified contractor list. This is still very much in development, and I know you all are very keen on what this is going to be, but let me give you a little information on what considerations are going into it now. We know that there are other qualified contractor lists in existence, so how can we consolidate those? How can we do that in a way where we're not adding additional barriers to contractors to stay on all these different lists? So we're trying to make it design it in a way that we can work with these existing lists and make it as easy as possible on contractors. Those are the considerations we're trying to design this program around. Some of the potential qualifications will be some training requirements, some insurance pieces, skills and labor standards as well. Here are the technologies that must be installed by a contractor on the qualified contractor list: any heat pump installation, any air sealing going on, and then electrical wiring, electrical panel upgrades as well. Next slide, please. Okay, here's an update on where we're at with the schedule. So fall of this year really began the stakeholder engagement and the program design. We are still in stakeholder engagement and design, and we're beginning to put together the application. That application is due in the spring, and we anticipate funds rolling out summer, fall of 2024. So that's the latest update on where we're at with the timeline. Next slide. Please take your phone camera out and scan this QR code if you haven't already. If you've already provided us feedback, awesome. If you have not, this takes you to a Google form, asks you some questions about your experience with rebates and barriers and all those things to give us those details to make sure that we're designing this program in a way that meets the needs of all of our stakeholders. So it has some of those questions there. I'll leave this up here for a second, just in case anybody's still going for that QR code. And that is most of my information. The next slide is just our contact information. If you have questions, I know you have questions. We have questions. I'll tell you, there's a lot of really dedicated folks working on this program. I'm working on the workforce side of things, the training residential energy contractors grant, but there's a lot of folks in the buildings department here at CEO working on the rebates program. It is complicated. If you look at the federal requirements, that gives you kind of a macro idea of what the intention is going to be, but the devil's in the details, right? So there's a lot of really smart, dedicated folks trying to figure out the best way to roll these programs out to make sure that it works for you all. One of our critical stakeholders, our contractors, also works for our residents, and we're also doing it in an equitable way. So that is my update. I think I'm doing okay on time, but any questions on any of that?
Yeah, should I jump in?
Please.
You
Hi,
bet.
Howard Geller. Chad, are there estimates yet of rebate amounts, or is that something you're seeking input on?
I
Where's
don't
that
have
at?
any good estimates on rebate amounts, but yes, for sure, please provide that in that form. Please provide any feedback that you have. If you have any feedback now, do you have any feedback on what those
Yeah.
rebate amounts should be? I can take that back.
Yeah. Part of my question, I didn't articulate this at the start of my question, is are all the rebate amounts fixed by the federal government, or is there flexibility in the amounts? That was
That's a
also,
great question. I believe that there's flexibility. That's what I
Yeah.
was getting at with, when you look at
Yeah.
the federal announcements on this, there's some big guidelines, but there is a lot of flexibility for local implementation, right? They want this to work for Colorado. So that's what those folks in the buildings department here at CEO are trying to do, is take in all of that feedback. There's a lot of great stakeholder feedback, right? So how do you design a program that works as much as we can for everyone? That's what's going on right now. So no, I don't think that those rebate amounts are fixed. That's something that's still being worked out in the design phase right now.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
And I'd like to add, focus-wise, since both of those programs are for income qualified based on the AMI, that I think from EBC's perspective, that's where we've talked a lot about, most of our members have said that we really need to be stacking the rebates that are available. If someone does not qualify for those, then we need to be able to say, oh, you don't qualify for those federal ones, but we have our local cities and our utilities. And so I think there's a lot of interest and effort to figure out the best solution, and just to let the group know, we're probably going to convene some meetings to get feedback on those pieces, as well as, like Chad talking about levels. We can have you come in and roll things out and runs past us so that we can give some feedback on those. So we'll be looking forward, for our members to, watch for that. Any comments on that?
Yeah, you bet. I mean, this whole space is pretty complicated, so that clear communication is a huge priority for us, right? We want to make sure that our program is designed in the best way, but it's also complementary. At least it doesn't fight against other programs. And then communication is going to be a really huge piece of this, right? So making sure that we have, one-pagers, websites that clearly show how this program works, how it works with other programs. This is a complicated piece, so communication is going to be a big piece of it.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Any other comments? And we're going to move forward.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Appreciate it, Chad. Next slide, please. So I'd like to introduce for the City and County of Denver, CASR, the Climate Action Sustainability Resiliency Department. And we have, on the residential side, we have Mac Prather from Energy Efficiency, and he's Energy Efficiencies Incentives Manager, and Sam Domeyer, the Building Electrification Administrator, who's talking about commercial, which is really starting to have a lot of buzz in our organization. So take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Patricia. This is Mac. Really appreciate the invitation to be here this morning with all of you. I know we just have kind of a few minutes to go over Denver's rebates. So thanks, Chad, for talking about what's kind of coming down the pipeline. We're going to transition to talking about some things that are out there in the market, at least for Denver right now. So you can go ahead to that next slide. Again, Mac Prather. I work on the residential side of the house at Denver, energy efficiency and electrification. If you want to talk about me later, it's he, him. Just a quick overview of Denver's rebates. I think most folks on the call know, but for those that don't, or for those that might be newer here, Denver does have rebates existing right now that are available for all residential, all commercial, and multifamily buildings in the city and county of Denver. What we're trying to do with those rebates is really reach customers in Denver and cover that cost between a gas system and an all-electric heat pump system. We're going to follow up after this meeting with more of the details and the nitty-gritty on these rebates. some resources you can share. If you're a distributor, you can, post those up on the wall. You can share them with folks you work with, but those will be in the meeting follow-ups as well. One thing that we always like to highlight is that Denver's rebates are a little bit different than the utility rebates with Xcel Energy. Denver requires pre-approval before the equipment goes in, and we'll talk about why in just a minute. So let's go to the next slide. Patricia also asked us for a little review of this year, 2023. It's been a busy year for a lot of folks. I know I have been kind of in the weeds for a lot of the year, and it's good to remember what we've done and where we came from. So Denver launched at least the residential portion of our rebates in 2022. We had really great participation from a lot of folks and good participation from EEBC. And we know that first year of the program, the rebate amounts for heat pumps were very generous. They were large amounts. We had a rebate application process, and I think that caused a lot of good buzz in Denver about heat pumps. But we also acknowledge that it caused just some issues because those rebates went away very quickly. They're extremely popular. And we came back to this group and got feedback on that process. And one really critical piece of feedback was that we need some transparency into the availability of those rebates. That led us to relaunch the program in 2023, completely rework the portal where folks apply for those rebates and the process. And we implemented, because of that feedback, a pre-approval or reservation system that allows us to basically reserve the funding for every rebate that goes through our program, project outwards, and actually display the budget on our website. So if you go to the website right now, you'll actually see that the funding for next year's budget has just been added to bring us into the next year. So just want to reflect on, the changes we made this year, the feedback that was incredibly appreciated from this group, from EEBC, and look forward to next year. We also launched commercial and multifamily rebates this year for the first time. And that was done, I know, with a lot of work from my colleague, Sam, in coordination with Xcel Energy. So Sam's going to talk in a minute, but you're welcome to add anything you want to highlight in here as well.
Yeah, thanks, Mac. I'll just quick jump in and say, as a reminder, Denver's rebates are stackable with Xcel Energy's rebates. We partner with them. We worked with them really closely to try to align most of our equipment specs. So please stack those. For example, when we're talking about something like a 4-ton rooftop unit, you can get up to $6,000 for that when you stack the rebates. If we're talking about a cold climate air source heat pump, you can get almost $8,000 for that if you stack the rebates. So just want to put that plug in, but thanks, Mac.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. In 2023, we also, as with most of what our office does, we have a focus on equitable uses of our funding. Some of that commercial multifamily rebate dollars have gone to what we call equity priority buildings. Those are things like nonprofits or low-income housing. And we've also worked with Energy Resource Center on the small residential single-family side, who's starting to offer some of those rebates to their weatherization assistance program participants. So we're very grateful for their team and their leadership in that space. Now let's go to the next slide. Looking forward, in 2023, we relaunched that program on January 1 for the residential program with a new process, a new portal. And we just want to prepare you all that January 1, 2024, as far as the rebate portal, the applications, and those actual measures that we're rebating, we're not going to anticipate any changes to those amounts, specifications, the process. So everything should continue through January 1. We're going to continue coordinating, of course, with Xcel Energy. We really value that partnership. And we're going to be bringing on board more assistance, more training, both for that rebate program and the actual process of applying to kind of work on ways to help people do that administrative work, and we'll be bringing on some workforce training to complement what's going on at the state level. It's also a great time to get feedback from y'all. So we have just a few minutes today, but I do want to open that invitation. We're always available if you want to reach out directly, and we'll be sharing some more information via email about how you can give feedback to continue to improve these programs. And then I'm actually going to hand it over to my colleague Sam and let him take it from here.
Yeah, thanks, Mac. And thanks to Patricia and EEBC for having us here today. I'll echo what Mac said. We really appreciate the opportunity. So if you could please go to the next slide. I'm going to spend just a minute or two, and it's going to be really quick because I know we are at our allotted time, talking about some of the resources that are available to you all. And again, I'll remind you that we're going to be sending out this slide deck afterward, along with some additional one-pagers and other resources. So you're going to see a lot of links in the next couple slides. You'll be able to access all of them afterward. So just want to make you aware for our home energy rebate program. So this is the program that Mac just talked about and manages on his own. We've got a lot of resources. We've got instructions for installers. We've got resources on how to use the installer portal. All those program and those rebate measure details are going to be available online. We also have just a plain old summary there, which I'm sure a lot of you just want access to. So denvergov.org care contractor resources is where you're going to go to get information for the home energy rebate program. If we could go to the next slide, please. So the building electrification program is the program I manage. We're focused on commercial multifamily buildings here in Denver. We've got a bunch of resources there. So we're going to be able to look at things like the rebates for equipment. We've got also an electrification feasibility report, which is something we offer to help people understand if electrification is a good choice for them. We've also got a few pilot spots still open. And so if you've got some really hard to electrify projects you just don't know how to go about, or if you need some additional funding, we might be able to get you into the pilot. There's also contractor trainings, information on permitting heat pumps. We don't have time to talk about that today, but my colleagues at Community Planning and Development here in Denver would be happy to work through that with you. We've also got just a heat pump 101. So maybe you just have customers you're working with that need to know more. All of that is there on that resource page. You can go to denvergov.org/building electrification for information on commercial multifamily rebates. Next slide, please. This is our summary slide. So you just saw some of this over the past few slides, but in general, all of our rebate programs are accessible by going to denvergov.org/heat pump rebates. It's a landing page. You can click on commercial, you can click on residential. There's also a heat pumps 101 box there just in case. So that page is a really good place to start. And then you'll see here all the different links that we have for our commercial program and also our single family program. Note that both programs have a program implementer. So we've got the direct link to Michael's Energy for the commercial programs, and we've got the direct link to Aptum for the residential programs. You'll see below, there's some additional links, emails. I'm not going to go through all of those right now, but again, you'll have access to this slide as soon as we finish up today. Next slide, please. And then if those links aren't enough, go ahead and just contact us directly. We've got an electrification inbox, which is electrification@denvergov.org. You can contact us there. If your customers have questions, they can contact us there. And of course, you can contact each of us directly. There's Mac's email, there's my email. That is all I have for today. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll kick it back over to Patricia.
Great, thanks, Sam. And appreciate the links. That was a request from a couple of members saying, can you consolidate where to go to find everything if I'm new, and where do I start? That's probably the slide to start with, was the goal with that. So we super appreciate it. So next we are going to have a discussion about the Excel 24 through 2026, or 2024 through 26 plan, which is now the DSM, DR, and BE plan, versus the old days when the EEBC started 15 years ago is just demand side management, which is another word for rebates. And then demand response and beneficial electrification because of the strategic issues. docket this year is being brought into the rebate plan. So we're going to take the time to talk about that, how EEBC influences that with our action groups and brings feedback and recommendations about how these rebates really work in the field and what is it going to take to implement them in the field. And these are the things that we need to think about. So what we've done, because it is a 600 page document, we want to make it, try to find the easy button for our members. And so our legal team and Howard Geller and are working through that. And I think we're to page 300, and Howard is putting together summaries for each one of the industries and giving us directions on how to get on, review that. So I have Howard Geller, who is the EEBC DSM expert and advisor for the EEBC. I'm gonna make sure you're on, Howard.
I'm here.
Awesome. And then we also have Matt Nadell, who is a part of Dietz and Davis, our legal counsel as well. And what we'd like to do is just have a discussion and ask you guys some questions that would be helpful for us and what to expect. So Howard, can you say something about the plan's overall scope and scale for beneficial electrification demand response?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. So I'm still in the process of digesting the plan and preparing a roughly 10-page summary that should be available next week for all EEBC members. The plan is big and bold, with the addition now of targets for beneficial electrification for the first time. Targets are expressed in the level of gas savings that Xcel Energy is supposed to achieve each year from their beneficial electrification programs. The plan, as Patricia alluded to, is electric energy efficiency programs, gas efficiency programs, beneficial electrification programs, and demand response programs. The total amount of projected spending by Xcel Energy is higher than ever. It's $148 million in total for 2024, $163 million in 2025, and $185 million in 2026 across all the programs, all the rebates, all the administration, the training, the evaluation, all the different activities that are housed within their demand side management and beneficial electrification areas. Those increases are primarily due to a projected rapid scale up in support for electrification in buildings and industry. The budgets for electrification efforts are about $11 million next year, $25 million in 2025, and $44 million in 2026. The budgets for the efficiency programs and demand response are similar to levels in recent years, a tad higher in gas energy efficiency compared to recent years, a tad higher in demand response, and similar level for all the electric efficiency programs, which are in total over $90 million a year, the electric efficiency programs. So there's a significant scale up, mainly due to what's being planned for supporting electrification, and the scope is broader. There are now explicit electrification programs, a set of programs that are mainly focused on supporting heat pumps in both residential sector and commercial sector, but include other other measures and programs, including some incentives for shifting from gasoline-powered lawnmowers and leaf blowers and other equipment like that to electric equipment. That's part of the electrification program, a new effort there. So I think that's the overview on size and scope.
Great. I know we are talking a lot about heat pumps because that's the trend with electrifying homes. Can you say something about some of the other sections for insulation and air sealing and our lighting action group and our other groups that are a part of this plan as well?
Right. Sure. So one of the big elements and factors here is the fact that starting recently and continuing going forward, Xcel has stopped the discounts on LED lamps in the big box stores and other retailers. There are now federal standards requiring high efficiency light bulbs, and so utility no longer provides the funding for the buy downs of the price of those bulbs in the stores, and no longer takes savings credit for the light bulbs. Those light bulbs were a big part of their overall savings. Something like 20 to 25% of their total electric savings came from the LED light bulbs. So this plan has some scale up of efforts in other areas to compensate as much as possible for the loss of savings from not being able to continue the light bulb discounts. So there are proposals to try to get more savings from areas like insulation and air sealing. Also attempts to get more savings from activities like feedback to customers on their electric and gas use and opportunities for savings using the new smart meters, provide better feedback and better insights to customers based on the additional data that customers and Xcel receive as a result of the smart meters. The area of commercial lighting and conversion to LED lamps in recent years has been a big area of savings. The utility is attempting to get as much savings as possible. They are, however, projecting that over time, they will not get as much savings in that area in commercial lighting. There's a decline going from 24 to 25 and then 25 to 26, as they believe we're hitting some saturation in the adoption of LED lighting, both indoor and outdoor lighting in the commercial and industrial sector. Those are some of the other noteworthy high-level aspects of the plan. Of course, they file a plan, EEBC, SWEEP, and City of Denver, and other parties intervene here, and we get an opportunity to make recommendations for modifications in the plan. And in these plan dockets in the past, the utility has been very open to feedback and willing to make some changes. In the past, we've always reached agreements with the utility and other interveners. It's called a settlement agreement, where there's an agreement on modifications that's presented to the commission with broad support from the utility and other stakeholders. That's the process we're starting on here. The plan was only filed 10 days ago, so we're beginning that process, and we'll be engaging. with the utility and others on all the details over the next 4, 5, 6 months.
Yeah, that is why the EBC formed originally, was for our companies to come together, because you have to have legal representation to participate in the demand side management, the settlement process that Howard mentioned. And our action groups are the ones that come together, bring the ideas. That's where you have the most opportunity to inform and influence and work with your fellow colleagues as well as competitors, for us to figure out how do we get the biggest piece of pie in our industry for each of our industry groups. And come up with assist Excel in coming up with the best rebates that are easier, that can be implemented in the field, and what does the field need to take those to market. So question, Howard, can you guide our members where to find and how to access those product details so we can get an upshot on how to use the EBC summary memo that you're working on? Just the high level. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Stephanie, who I believe is from Excel, put a link to the plan in the chat. And I'll have links in the summary as well. So dig in.
Great. Can you walk us through where you said that in the summary it would have like where you would go to find the specific sections, where
Right.
to look for the actual rates, and then we will have that document, a summary under each one of the industry groups. So insulation, air sealing, and our lighting and our heat pumps, commercial and residential will be broken out for you with a summary, and then where to look for the different information.
Sure. So the plan starts with like a 40-page executive summary with a lot of overview tables. And then it goes through program by program in different areas. It starts with the business programs and goes alphabetically through those, and then residential. There's write-ups like in previous DSM plans that include, marketing strategies, the measures that are included, and just sort of a summary of the overall program. And Excel calls the individual, what we say, programs in their terminology, their products. But they go through those. Then there's a very long section on all the details of how they calculate energy savings and peak demand reduction. Lots of formulas, page after page, measure by measure, how they do that, that's included. And then in the back of the plan, there are, I believe, 4 pages of tables that include all the assumptions measure by measure, or key assumptions measure by measure, on what they're assuming about incremental costs, what the proposed rebate level is, what the estimated energy savings and peak demand reduction is, if they're measures where there's a deemed value for savings. So starting on page 600 of the 633-page plan, there's tables, and that's where you need to go to see the proposed rebates. The rebate levels are generally not included in the write-ups. They're in the tables in the back of the plan. But I will provide a summary of all that and an explanation of that in the summary that I'm writing up.
So that'll be for each rebate for each industry. There'll be one separate summary for each one. So that's the easy button for our members and the action groups to be able to go, here's the page number, here's the summary on it, here's concerns, here's ideas, here's the changes, what to think about. And those types of things will be in the summaries?
Yes.
Great. And then from there, then you'll be able to look at the rebate amounts and think about implementation and what the contractors need, manufacturers in the marketplace, as well as, you know, the auditors, the energy analysts, and, you know, those are some of our big groups, our engineering firms as well. So that is super helpful. Just to give an idea of what the steps are in this process, could be 6 months, could be 9 months. This last time it went over the process, what we call settlement process. Go ahead, you gonna say something?
I don't mean to interrupt you in the middle of yours.
No, go ahead.
So I just wanted to mention one other thing. So the utility is calling this 2024, 25, 26, a 3-year program plan, but they filed it late because the previous docket finished late. And the current programs remain in effect until the new plan starts. So the 23 plan that's now in effect and all the incentives and rules currently in effect will stay in effect probably through the middle of next year. It's unclear exactly when the new plan and the new rebates and rules will take effect, but certainly not before next summer, possibly late summer, early fall. We'll see the implementation start, but there's no gap to the current programs continue while we're getting approval of the new plan.
Great. And that is the key. The action groups work with Howard and me and Dietz and Davis, and this is how your rebates are made. There is an opportunity to give input, and I think that's what we want to make sure that members know is like this is actually how the rulemaking of our rebates happens. And so understanding you as our members, especially contractors, manufacturers, and distributors, don't need to understand the level of detail and the technical pieces. That's why we have our legal team, but we will help guide you through because we know the process. And you don't have to learn the process. We'll take you through that, but it's your information from the field, the boots in the field, that is so valuable, you know, to giving input to getting rebates and different programs that work for you guys. So that is why we have the action groups. Earlier, I mentioned as we were coming into the meeting that our action groups that everyone can participate in is the high performance building envelope group. That's new. So that's our insulation, air sealing, energy analysts, any company that touches the building envelope. And Sean Mullins from Owens Corning is a chair, and Robbie Schwartz is co-chairing from Built Tank. And then we have the HVAC heat pump committee. We have 3 co-chairs. That's Sean Lamons from Mitsubishi, Pete Perret from GA Larson, a distributor, and also Matt Baker from Daikin. And there's been a lot of interest for starting a commercial subgroup because of the rebates in both Denver and with Excel. EEBC does work with the other utilities throughout the state as well to inform and work with them. So, but we're, you know, talk about Excel a lot because we're in the middle at the beginning of this process. And then commercial lighting, co-chaired by Scott Kelly, used to be Colorado Lighting, and it's now CUI Services. And then we have kind of an ad hoc group that gets together when there's an RFP or an RFI. There's a demand response and new technologies group, and Kaylee Mangan from Recurve, and then also Chris Prado from Energy Solutions are kind of our ad hoc co-chairs in that area. So there's so much learning that goes on in those groups and sharing that helps us. So do you want to comment on how the value of working together with the action groups in how we bring solutions and ideas to Excel. Howard?
Oh, sorry, I
Said
thought you were.
Howard. Howard, do you want to just make a comment of how we all work together with you and the action groups?
Sure. Yeah, we'll have a series of meetings here with the different action groups one by one to go over ideas for feedback to provide to Excel and the other interveners, and we'll end up developing a memo with a set of recommendations. In the past, there's something like 20, 25, 30 specific recommendations. It can't just be, hey, we don't like what you're suggesting on, qualification levels for air sealing. It has to be very specific. We want you to modify this value or change this rebate amount or change this threshold or do more in the way of training, add some additional elements to training and so forth. So I think Matt is going to talk about the schedule, I believe, here coming up, but we need to get moving. We don't have a lot of time. I know this is hitting everyone as the holidays are coming up. I'm committed to getting the summary done before the holidays. But then in January, we're going to need to start to develop our responses and get going on that memo. I'm here to help in taking the lead on that memo. And that's a key document that we will provide at the beginning of the settlement negotiations. We haven't heard definitively that Excel will be convening settlement negotiations, but I'd say I'm 99.9% sure that they will do that. They have always wanted to do that, and we've always done that in the past and done it successfully.
Great. So Matt Nadell, would you really quick just give us the kind of the milestones that we go through, and then we'll move on to the next topic. But I think there's kind of very specific pieces of there's 2 months to do this, 2 months, but it's fast and furious. It's not it feels long, but there's a lot happening constantly to get this done. So go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Patricia. You're right that between now and when a decision comes out from the Public Utilities Commission, there's 250 days. However, there's a lot of deadlines in between that make that 250 days go very quickly. So as Howard mentioned, meeting in those action groups coming up here is going to be incredibly important. And if you can't be in those action groups, that's fine. But convey your knowledge and your desires from these summaries that Howard is going to be sharing to us. So that way we can make sure to include them in these memos and the hopeful settlement negotiations that occur. But what happens on a very high level is essentially if settlement negotiations can occur in January, February, that's great. And hopefully we can avoid further legal proceedings at the PUC. But otherwise, we look at doing what's called answer testimony. And so Howard, as an expert here, is putting together, this big document that addresses all of the points that Excel has made in their plan and in all of their experts' testimony. Excel then has a chance to come back and respond to that in the mid to end of April. And then if necessary, if we can't find settlement on a lot of these areas, then we go to a hearing in front of the Public Utilities Commission, and that will happen around mid to end of May. So we're looking springtime. And I know that everyone's focused on the holidays right now, but that approaches very quickly. So ideally, like Howard said, there's some settlement discussions that occur, but early summer to late summer is where some decisions start to be made. That's the general deadline or deadlines.
Got it. Awesome. So with that, we are right on track, on time to move into our next topic. Thank you, Howard. Thanks, Matt. I can in part how critical this is for our businesses and for you guys to jump in, because once those decisions are made and the rebates are in place, they are now in place for 3 years, and there's not much opportunity to make any changes. So this is it. This is the time. So look at your staff and who can participate and bring what your company needs to the table, to be able to utilize and create rebates that are very effective in the marketplace and easy for you to use, you know, that you won't just say, don't want to bother with that. So I'm going to call out 2 resources. I saw Shauna put in a reminder that Colorado Energy Office tracks all the code adoption, where all the jurisdictions, the cities and the counties are on codes, and it's in a spreadsheet. It's great. A lot of times and I used to be in insulation air sealing, and so the contractors appreciate being able to, you know, look at the zip code and see exactly where the codes are in that jurisdiction, especially since they're at different stages moving into electrification solutions in code. So that can be found, I think, in the Colorado Energy Office's website. Also, Love Electric .org is another website. There is a spreadsheet that the utilities and some of the cities have been working on for heat pumps to align the not only look at all the rebates from all the utilities in the state, but then also the requirements. It's in one spreadsheet. And just a special shout out to Peter from Pete, from Jay Larson, and Matt from Daikin, because they actually went through and populated that and got that project going. So EBC has contributed some, you know, helpful resources, very practical, but in a spreadsheet. So it's what usually the contractors want to use. Instead of putting in a zip code, they need to look and compare. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next topic. So next slide, please. And I'm going to have to move something here. Sorry, I drug over so I could talk and see people. Okay, there we go. So what's trending? This is our panel discussion, and we're going to do Q&A. I mentioned earlier that when we're in the Q&A session, we're asking that everyone you can use 2 formats. You can either use the raise your hand button, and we'd like to have you ask your question directly so we all can hear it and have that conversation. But you also can put your questions in the chat as well. And we picked these topics because they're trending. It's not that they're completely baked, I guess I would say, in the marketplace. And our members are talking about what they see is emerging, what's changing, where their business is going. So this is a topic that I've heard the utilities talking about, as well as cities. And, you know, our organization, EEBC, we're the progressive contractors, manufacturers, and distributors. We're the contractors that are the first adopters using high performance energy efficiency and now moving into beneficial electrification. There's a lot going on out in the field. And what we want to do is talk about this topic of the intersection between the building envelope, we couldn't call it weatherization, but it is the insulation, air sealing, the energy consultants, auditors, analysts, and then on the other side is the HVAC heat pump contractors, and the opportunities that we want to look at, future opportunities of where your businesses can take advantage of this. And then how does your business leverage your assets and what you do with this growing beneficial electrification trends that we were talking about, and because they're not going away, and it is becoming the new normal. and how do we want to play in that market? And we also want to look at the value of understanding that intersection of those two business groups and the opportunities for collaboration for you to take advantage of. So, and this is also from our June meeting, we talked about, you know, the grid and can the grid handle the electrification demand and the load that's coming. And these contractor groups are critical to actually keeping the load down on the grid. And you play a really important role in that. And so what I'd like to do is introduce Dan Wildenhouse. And I'm going to show you on the screen there. And Dan is with the Center for Energy and Environment. He's the Senior Technical Manager, Training Consultant Services. And Dan, would you like to introduce yourself and give us a little bit more? He's going to basically give us how would I always say it? A level set and you know, bring us the details to set up the panel discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Patricia. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, that's great.
Excellent. We love it when technology actually works. So as Patricia mentioned, my name is Dan Wildenhouse with Center for Energy and Environment. I myself am a recovering contractor. I actually worked in homes and small businesses and multifamily and HVAC and weatherization for about 15 years. And for the last almost 15 years, I've been on the other side of the table, primarily doing training and consulting for utilities and governments. And it's an interesting time for me to be here with you guys. I live in West Palm Beach, Florida, but I do a fair amount of work in your neck of the woods. So you heard earlier from Sam and Mac with the City and County of Denver, and I am on one of the support teams for the commercial electrification program there. And then some of you may have met me as I have done a fair amount of training for both Excel and PRPA in terms of heat pump training for contractors. And some of what we talked about really recently in an Excel training was the impetus for this little level set that I'm going to do today. So I'm going to use some slides that we did just a few months ago. So for some of you that may be new, for others, you may have seen a couple of these. I'm just going to try and I've truncated them down, try and level set. And I do have to state that a couple of these slides were written up by Ann Kirkpatrick, recently retired from Excel, their amazing trade ally coordinator for the last many years. So with that, I think we can jump into the slide deck. And then after I'm done with the level set, we'll bring out the rest of our panelists, Scott Sudrith, Chris Prado, and Sean Lamons, all great people, and I like to say industry friends of mine that I'm happy to know. So with that, you know, whether we call it home efficiency or HVAC plus weatherization, we're excited to see these things working together. One piece of level set is you hear all the time, you know, beneficial electrification, but then you hear about decarbonization as well. So how are these aligned? I'm using, what I'm going to use here is kind of a generalization that's a merge between what we hear from a lot of different clients out there. So this is not specific to the City and County of Denver or Excel. This is kind of a generalization. With beneficial electrification, there are 4 primary pillars. A 5th pillar that's been added by a lot has been environmental justice as an addition, but fostering grid resilience. If we do beneficial electrification and it's not good for the long-term grid, it is not part of beneficial electrification. It needs to be able to save money over time. So measures that have what we call long measure lives, meaning the estimated amount of time that measure should last, are really good because they pencil out better. It has to reduce negative environmental impacts, and it needs to help us move away from fossil fuel appliances. That's our beneficial electrification. Let's hit the tab or space bar and go to the next half. The next half is responsible decarbonization. And within this, beneficial electrification is a component of it. Sorry, my yellow arrow seems to have drifted down from when I originally created it, but beneficial electrification is a component of responsible decarbonization. So with responsible decarbonization, we have things like load reduction, which is, we'll talk about it a little bit more in a few minutes, but that has benefits for homeowners and for our utilities. It has to be good for the American supply chain. So it has to be good for manufacturing, distribution, and our contractors. If it doesn't do that, I don't consider it personally responsible decarbonization. We have to provide flexible solutions for homeowners. When you think about beneficial electrification, we're really strictly, again, looking at moving away from fossil fuel appliances. But a lot of homeowners call a contractor or business owners because they have other things beyond just a desire to electrify happening. So responsible decarbonization needs to have that problem solving as a component. And then it needs to pair well with renewable generation. So this is how we ensure that long-term vision and goals by our local governments and our utilities are aligned and work well. And when we look at, for instance, what Excel's plans are for 2030, 2040, and 2050, this all has to align quite well to make sure we keep up with renewable generation goals. Let's take a look at the next slide. So the big thing is what's in it for us, for EEBC members. Let's start with utilities really quickly and go to the next slide. So one of the interesting things is, again, we talk a lot with decarbonization and electrification about heat pumps and heat pump water heaters and, you know, electric induction cooktops, and those are great, they really are. But when we really want to think about how does this provide that larger benefit in terms of that responsible decarbonization, we want to look at what else can go into that. So load reduction is one of it. This is an example of some analysis that my team did in Minnesota. So it's a very cold climate, a little different, of course, from Colorado, but a cold climate nonetheless. And what you're seeing here is the blue bars, or the left of the bars, is approximately what percent of single family homes could be addressed fully with a heat pump of these various types. So we look at a high-end 5-ton heat pump, just with the older building stock, could by itself address about 40% of the buildings completely. But if we look down at like a high-end 3-ton or a reference 5-ton, we're talking about 25% or less of the buildings could be fully addressed. If we did full weatherization, however, you can see that a high-end 5-ton is now 75 to 80% of the homes could be addressed with that. And you see that high-end 3-ton now creeping up to 50% of the homes. So on one hand, doing envelopes allows us to have heat pumps as a solution for more homes. Secondly, it also results in a 25% peak load reduction. So some of the concerns people bring up with electrification is, will we be causing new peak load problems? Well, if we pair it with weatherization, we can get around quite a bit of this, and that provides real benefit to the utilities. Let's look at the next slide. Howard mentioned earlier the settlement process that happens with DSM filings. And this was a settlement item from the 2023 DSM plan. And this effectively now gives Xcel direction and the ability to provide a bonus installation rebate of $500 to $600 as long as they do the weatherization within 6 months before or after the heat pump is installed. I don't work directly for Xcel, so this is, again, a slide that Xcel created. There are other programs Xcel has as well that I encourage you to look into. We don't have the time to go through all of them today, but they do have their whole home efficiency program that gives homeowners 2 years to do 3 qualifying improvements. And if they do, not only do they get the standard rebates, they'll get a bonus when those 3 improvements have been done. So it's really a motivation to see people addressing the whole home's efficiency, not just a heat pump. Let's take a look at the next slide.
And Dan,
Yeah.
can I ask a quick question? When you
Yeah.
say weatherization, what do you include in weatherization?
We'll actually get to that slide in a couple of minutes. I've got my list of topics, but Xcel has their own table when you look up the whole home that lists the qualifying measures.
Awesome, thank you.
You bet. So for contractors, what's in it for us? So first, we like to think about who is working with customers when they aren't in crisis. And by that, I mean, an emergency replacement. If we look at heating and cooling and hot water, anywhere from, when we talk to contractors, it's anywhere from 50 to 90% of the work are emergency replacements, right? The homeowner is in crisis. They need something done today. But there's that, 10 to 50% that is not in crisis. But if we look at home energy audits, insulation and air sealing, and things like solar and electric vehicles, those are typically decisions that are made not in crisis, not in it has to be done today or else. So there's a real opportunity here to be thinking about how we do planned and phased approaches and solutions to homes when we do our work in partnership with those opportunities when the homeowner is not in crisis. Let's take a look at the next slide. There's some opportunities we can connect here. Looks like my green arrows have drifted a little bit as well. So within that context I just mentioned of looking for our opportunities, not just at time of emergency replacement. If a home energy audit is done first, that opens the door for that whole home efficiency rebate program that I just mentioned, which has 25% more rebates as bonuses if folks go that route, because you have to have a home energy audit as the first step. If you do the envelope work first, so in a scenario where there's either a partnership or a home performance company that can do both, research has shown that on average in our colder climates, a heat load calculation will show that you typically need anywhere from a half to a full ton smaller heat pump after weatherization. And let me ask you this, does a 3-ton heat pump cost less than a 4-ton heat pump? Yeah, it usually does. So there's actually, not only are we helping to allow us to right size better for the house, but we may also be able to get a lower first cost because we did the envelope first. What if we did the heat pump first, but we know we're going to be doing the envelope later? Well, we can adjust what we call a switchover temperature. If we are doing, for instance, a dual fuel system, we might be able to lower that switchover temperature later because the envelope has changed and the load for the building will change eventually. And then we can also look at the solar and EV. This is often something that people aren't thinking about right off the bat when they think of whole home efficiency. But homes that have solar and EV done first, typically that panel upgrade or the need and assessment of that is done as a component of putting in solar or putting in an EV charger. So we can really start to think about this as, if we can get into a whole home efficiency approach from each of these 5 entry points, we're increasing dramatically the amount of time that we're dealing with homeowners not in immediate crisis, and we're opening the doors for a lot of connection. Let's take a look at the next slide. So Patricia asked, what are the weatherization measures? This is by no means, the only way to look at it, but it's a good graphic, and it kind of can help you think about a lot of what we think about in whole home efficiency. Mechanical measures, health and safety measures, building shell measures, and electric baseload measures. All of them are important. And when I work directly with contractors, whether they're HVAC contractors or weatherization or general contractors or electricians, I ask them, within the category that you typically operate, how many of these things does your company offer? And is there anything that you might be able to offer or bring in-house from some of these other categories? As soon as people start doing this assessment and recognizing, oh, there's some things we're probably not going to do, then it really leads to, can you meet and work with a contractor that does some of these other measures? So that between you've got the very large suite of measures that can be offered to the homeowners. That goes back to that flexibility of homeowner savings. Speaking of homeowners, let's take a look with the homeowners. So what is the customer asking for, right? And that starts with, why did they call you? Did they call you with a comfort complaint? Did they call you with an indoor air quality problem, a high bill, or is it an emergency replacement? Or maybe they want to invest and protect the value of their home. Those are all different motivations and drivers. Let's hit the space bar. And one of the things they're going to ask you when there is a laundry list of things to do is, which measure should I do first? How do I prioritize this? And the answer is going to depend both on things like product availability, rebates, things that can buy down first cost, whether something is aging or at end of life, useful life in terms of equipment, but also as well as, are we addressing something like a comfort problem? And then let's hit the space bar one more time. Another question they're gonna is, who should I call or Google to learn more? And I want to pose this question for the contractors here. Would you rather that they have to go to the EEB website or the City and County of Denver website or Excel's website? Or would you rather they call you, where you get to be that real, the one who is bringing the knowledge and you're become a true resource for the homeowner? That's what we hope you can get to that point. Let's go to the next slide. And we have to remember there's a lot of different motivations for homeowners. Whenever we're proposing solutions, they can't be just solutions that quote unquote fit into a box of a program. We really want to ask enough questions so we're really understanding which of these are just some example motivations that people may have. Are there some of these that are driving some of the decision making? And how do we use that to package whole home solutions? And with that, I think we're about ready to jump into our panel. So I'll hand it back to Patricia real quick for a little bit of next level introduction. I may have gone a little too fast and Patricia might not quite be
I
ready.
actually was talking, but I didn't have my mute off. I apologize. I was asking if we can get all the panelists on the screen to introduce themselves. So we have Platte River Power Authority with the 4 utilities up north: Fort Collins, Longmont, Loveland, and I think Estes Park. Scott Sudreth, he's the program manager of the Energy Solutions Department. And we've got Chris Pareto from Energy Solutions, a trade ally manager, and he works nationally and can bring a lot of interesting data about what's going on in this area and other places. And then we have Sean Lamons, who is the manager, and I have
performance construction
title. Thank you. From Mitsubishi Electric and Trade. HVAC US. And if you guys want to just go through really quick and give us a little bit of the background, the combination between all of you is awesome because we have a lot of you have the dual experience on both sides and then also are working in different areas of the market on this as well. So maybe start with Scott.
Morning, everybody. Can you hear me, Patricia?
Yes.
Good morning. My name is Scott Sudreth. I work with Platte River Power Authority. I run the Efficiency Works retrofit program. I've been in the industry about 25 years, originally from North Carolina. Used to be part of building performance engineering out there. Had a lot of experience seeing this industry come together. Very excited about the panel discussion today. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Chris?
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. And thanks for the opportunity, Patricia. My name is Chris Prado. I'm with Energy Solutions. We are an environmental consulting firm focused on creating large-scale environmental change. So I work here in Colorado. I'm down in Colorado Springs, but I interface with several of our programs, both on the commercial side here in Colorado and across the country, particularly in California. I've been in this industry about 16, 17 years, a lot up in the Pacific Northwest, but now focused in Colorado and a few other programs. So nice to see you all.
Excellent. Great. Sean?
Good morning, everybody. Sean Lamons. I work for Mitsubishi Electric. It's funny because people think I work for a car company. I don't. I work for Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC. It's heat pumps. And I have a background in building science and just really try to reinforce the message that the building shell sets the pace for the HVAC and taking it from there and help people understand and apply heat pumps, particularly in a cold climate.
Great. So I think it's interesting how we're talking about like the 3 actors, Sean, you called us about, we talked about the heat pump contractors, and it's hard to not say auditors, but the energy analysts and insulation and air sealing. And I think that if we look at why should the building envelope weatherization matter to the heat pump contractors, what would you guys say?
Well, I'll start and I'll just say, if you understand it and can talk about it, it's a competitive advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say that if your goal is to help the customer, how are you helping the customer by giving them a system that doesn't have a good envelope? Because it'll be oversized, meaning that you would probably want to tell them, been up in that attic, you need some insulation. I can give you a system, but you need insulation. So the envelope is the manual J. And the manual J is never perfect anyway, but to improve the envelope anywhere, that just lowers that manual J. So it's your friend to improve the envelope.
Awesome.
I'll add one last thought here. For HVAC contractors, one of the questions I ask is, where do you consider to be the end of your distribution system? Right? So you're distributing, let's say, with a ducted system, and you've got heating vents and cooling vents in every room. Is that the end of the distribution system at that grill or register? Probably not, right? The air, you still want it to stay conditioned when it comes out. The end of your distribution system is the walls and the ceiling and the floor and the doors and the windows. So having those tight and well insulated, it's no different than extending the tightness and insulation of the ductwork. You're just doing it so the whole house gets the benefit.
Yeah, I'll just mention, I think all that is important. And, you know, I think it can be very overwhelming for a homeowner real quick when you come in there and you're looking at replacing a AC with a heat pump because they've heard about it. It's great, right? And then all of a sudden you might be recommending 3 or 4 other things. So I think that's just important to keep in mind. Also curious for the contractors here if they've actually been able to engage other trades and, you know, develop partnerships and be able to work collaboratively so that they are taking a whole homes approach and ideally doing them in a very particular order that benefits the home and the grid. Put that question out there. I don't know if we need to open it up right now, but I think that's an important thing to think about.
No, it's a good question. So then on the other side, where does the energy rater come into play? Because they go in beforehand, maybe before they're even considering having to change out their unit, you know, gas furnace, that type of thing. So how do they have an advantage or to think about things I wonder about is, you know, traditionally they don't tell you about where your gas furnace is at, how much life it has in it, what are you going to consider in the future, what's your plan? How can the auditor play in this space as a partner between both the insulation and the heat pump side?
I'll start first on this one. That auditor is going to be seen as theoretically a third party that the customer should hopefully trust a little more because there's nothing to be sold. Nobody gets a user manual with their house, so nobody knows why we should change a filter. So that auditor is going to set a foundation to at least know what is this house, what's its strengths, what's its weaknesses. And, you know, we should probably give customers the best path to electrification, which would be start with an assessment. So you can have all that info in your hands before you start making decisions. But I think the auditor has a really good auditor. I said it too. I think the analyst has a really good chance of really setting the tone, setting the foundation, and helping sell the work for the other contractors. Because when that customer comes to that insulation contractor now and the heat pump contractor, they're going to say, I want these things. We sell vacuuming attics, something that our contractor struggled with, but our third-party assessor has that trust to where they're like, oh, if I remove the insulation in my attic, these contractors can do better air sealing work. Yes, they can. So I think the auditor gets a chance to really set the tone. So I'll pass it on.
Yeah, I'll tackle it as well and say that it's a progression of industry knowledge to be able to bring in this skill set. So if whether or not you're working with an industry partner that does building analysis, or it's maybe a career pathway for someone on staff right now, right? So maybe they want to say that they like, there's a lot of digital natives out there that are, you know, a decade into their career. And it could be a great way to hold on to a great employee or a group of folks that are interested in opening up the avenues of that intersection of system and performance and operation and the demand that the house places on the HVAC. So looking for opportunities around sales to that allow you to optimize your business while not taking on everything. But I just think that, a little bit of education, finding folks that are interested in entering or staying in the industry that maybe are non-traditional folks there, or underrepresented, or whatever that looks like. There's so much money on the table right now for training and integration of these technologies. I think is a huge opportunity.
Yeah, I'll mention, kind of from a zoomed out perspective, and touch on what Dan mentioned for how these audits or home visits come about in the first place, right? It's really a customer outreach, because something's gone wrong, or they are an early adopter, or they really want to push forward with decarbonization in their own home. I think we need to think about ways to engage the market before something goes wrong, because the vast majority of the population feels no need to get an energy audit when their stuff's working, and they're used to their situation. So I think it's important to figure out ways for utilities and for us to better market the benefit of being proactive to the larger population, so that they can get ahead of failure, equipment failure, and get ahead of not having to be in an emergency situation. So again, they can do things in the right order to reduce the sizing of their potential heat pump, and actually, cut off gas if that's what they want to do.
I'll add to that, there's both opportunities and potential requirements as well that can drive this. So from the opportunity side, we talked about when there are stackable incentives or bonus incentives available for being able to do weatherization and HVAC within a short period of time together. And typically an assessor or analyst is going to be trained at looking at all that and seeing how to stack it. But we may also get to a point with the Inflation Reduction Act programs as they come out, requiring an assessment to be done before certain rebates are allowed to be taken. So I look at this and say there's right now it's opportunity, because there's the ability to help figure out and stack incentives, but it may also eventually become an inevitability or a requirement to take advantage of certain programs. So I think they play a critical role, and it's worth embracing now while we're in the opportunity zone before it becomes a requirement.
Those are great comments. As if I was an energy analyst and I was thinking about everything that you guys said, I'd be like, how do I make more money doing this? Like, is there, that's the hard part. Those audits are not, they're not very expensive. We're talking about a lot more understanding and a lot more probably training to be able to talk through the mechanicals that they normally don't talk through, other than combustion and safety issues. Mm-hmm. But and lay that picture out for a homeowner. Where is the opportunity for them to partner with insulation and air sealing, and with the heat pump contractors, where they can actually improve their bottom line? Like, what's their motivator, other than it's the right thing to do? We might not have answers here, but that's the question I would ask, and that's why I'm curious if you've seen any. Those.
I've seen in certain markets, I've seen home energy assessors and raters and analysts, et cetera, open new lines of business, such as doing manual J load calculations. Not every HVAC contractor wants to take that on, or maybe they want to eventually grow into it. And in the meantime, they still need someone who can do this. So a home energy assessor can take on some new things like that really help. Now, it doesn't always go great, because they might have a differing opinion on what the load should be for the house than the contractor. But it's a great start. At the very least, Scott had mentioned this in the notes. The data captured during a home energy assessment is usually a lot of the good data points for an accurate load calculation. So turning that into a business opportunity is something that we've seen. The other ones we see are the non-energy benefit type stuff, like really being that expert and contributor for things like indoor environmental quality, and bringing some of those types of benefits to a project that has the name efficiency or energy associated with it. But often there are some real benefits associated with indoor environmental quality. And that's another place where an assessor can build their business and really shine.
Patricia, I think the opportunity lies in electrification itself. Once again, when I said they set the tone, what they're really doing is they're taking the confusion that we're all struggling with the IRA, who goes first, all of our, we have these silos. Someone needs to act like a general contractor and say, I will take care of your journey for you and do that. And you see people like Elephant Energy, Helios, and others starting to do that. That advisor has the opportunity to do that as well if they choose, because they know as a rater that, hey, I work with HVAC, I work with insulation and air sealing, I work with a general contract. They sort of know what those relationships are, and they should be used to talking to those partners about, this is what you need to do to meet the air sealing requirement. This is what you need to do to get a grade 1 insulation installation. So they're already in the role of sort of connecting those dots and threading those connections. So I think they have a great opportunity to continue that with the electrification journey, being that trusted advisor. And I think the contractors, it would behoove them to partner with these auditors to see if they want that kind of partnership. They might love to send work your way if they knew that you were going to handle it well. One thing as an advisor is you don't like to send people away if you don't think they have a good solution. But if I knew that Dan's team was going to take care of insulation every time I send them that way, I'd say, here's Dan's card. He's one of my vendors that I've been working with, and they do great work, to where that gives you such great, better mentality when you're passing on those quotes. So that's my input.
I'll take a slightly different tack to this. We're an organization of businesses, right? So there's profitability to your question, Patricia, that we have to consider. And how much time does it take to get to the sale, complete the project, and at the end of the day, at the end of the week, you still have money in the bank to operate and grow your business, right? Mm-hmm. So if you can approach this as an opportunity of information, of strategic competitive advantage, if you can internalize some of these details and move through that conversation quickly, just asking the question, have you had an energy audit or an energy analysis? That prompts the individual. And maybe if you don't have it, it doesn't mean that you walk away from that customer, but if you can navigate a handful of those questions fairly quickly, it's very, very likely you're going to leave that home, that customer, not only in a better position, and you're going to differentiate yourself in that conversation, because a lot of the folks that are going into and doing in-home sales, they're not asking that question. They don't understand, sort of some of these interactions. They're out there to close the deal, and that may or may not serve the customer's need in the long run. And so if you can serve the customer's needs in the long run and in the short run, you become a trusted provider for them. And that goes back to stars on your website, or et cetera, and so on. So it's a very, it's a strategic advantage to think about, if not in bringing these skills on board, at least you have maybe a checklist, a short list of questions, or that list of business cards or referrals to some companies that you've built a little bit of time and relationship with, to say, yep, call these 2 or 3 companies to get a little bit better information, or just having a PDF, a spreadsheet of those resources that, even if you're not directly familiar with them, you can hand that off to the homeowner or the decision maker and say, here's a program from PRPA, here's a program from Xcel Energy, here's a program from the city of Denver, et cetera, and so on. Love Electric is a fantastic central resource for that, and there are others out there for sure. So lots of opportunities.
Great point. Christy, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think they about covered it, about the importance of connecting with the energy auditor across the trades.
And I haven't, I have been talking about, how do we stack the rebates and make it easy for the contractor? And I've been thinking of that from the perspective of the HVAC contractor, the heat pump contractor, and in listening to this conversation, I'm like, oh, we should be doing some training and focusing and adding the energy consultant to the mix of who really can go through. If it was a, you know, a portal and they went in and got the information, you're qualified for this, let's talk about your whole plan. Let's look at all the rebates available from the city, the state, the feds, the, you know, that's available for you. And now let's talk about financing. The auditor could be, you know, the analyst could have huge impact in driving, you know, that business. And it seems like it would be valuable for the insulation air sealing companies and the heat pump companies to create those kind of alliances and have a group that are working like that. Is that make sense?
Yeah, Patricia, I think you're touching on the importance of clarity and incentive structure across all these different entities, and understanding that the efficiency requirements for a heat pump, for example, may not be the same across Excel and PRPA and the state, but it should at least sort of be in place for an extended period of time so that the energy analysts can go in there and be confident in what they're giving. So the last thing you want to do is promise an incentive that's you don't qualify for. That's going to cause a lot of bad PR very quickly. So it's a challenge. There's a lot of money on the table, but I think there's a lot of folks that are just kind of tuning out because it's overwhelming and it's not aligned.
And yeah, I'll remind us again that they're trying to sell the story of what that customer wants. They're prepping the customer to buy your products. They don't do the work, the analyst. They are the, you know, the third party. Now, Home Performance could bring all that into one company, and that's a good thing too. But realize they're not your competitor. They're really your collaborator. They need you as much as you will eventually find, I think you're needing them, that, you know, if they're going to sell a good story, they need your teams to deliver. And if your team feels stressed, trying to keep up with this building science, the whole house, the indoor air quality, all this stuff, because you live in a silo, then you really do need to partner, because the partner that we're talking about is someone who is thinking whole house. They are thinking the EV charger in the garage. They are thinking the solar on the roof and the insulation and, you know, all of that stuff. So if that stresses you out to try to think about, man, I'm really good at my one trade, then let yourself be subbed out. Work with these other people. They will help sell the customer that it's a good idea. You just come in and do the good work. So we don't all have to be the salespeople. And that auditor, they get the phone call, just like the HVAC gets the phone call for comfort. The auditor gets the phone call for what's going on with my house. So I think there's a good collaboration opportunity.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And to the point you mentioned, Patricia, about the assessor being the one who can look and stack the incentives. They're also often, depending on the level of audit or assessment that's being done, the one who does the first blush for the homeowner, and this is what you could save if you did these measures. So in a commercial building, it's like an ASHRAE level 2 or level 3 audit. You're going to get a financial analysis. And there's a version of that for residential as well. So imagine how much more accurate this can become when they can start layering in incentives and rebates and tax credits, so they can show where the buy down is on first cost, as well as where the savings are operationally. So I think there's some real potential there, depending again on the level of assessment we're talking about. And I think this is such a good topic, because this translates to the commercial and multifamily sector just as well as it does to the residential sector.
So from the insulation air sealing company's perspective, they don't have, I don't know if it's an advantage, where heat pump, when your gas furnace goes out, you have to decide quick, right? Where insulation is usually when something's not right, they'll think about it. Or if they heard, oh, I can get more savings to insulate and air seal, it's a softer, you know, I think, drive, right, than the others. So how can they utilize those relationships with the assessors and the energy assessors and heat pumps? Like, any ideas for that group as well? They'll get brought into projects from an energy assessor, but I'm just saying, like, a more active way that it can be super beneficial for them especially maybe with the heat pump companies.
Well, slightly different track. I will say that whether or not they are in partnership with folks out there, I think we've established the partnerships can be very valuable. But I think it's important that we stop or reduce the discussion around savings, and we improve and expand the conversation around comfort and indoor air quality. Thrive Home Builders, one of my favorite builders, that message of showing the photo of the child in the home, and the tagline is, the air she breathes is as important as the food she eats. And that air she breathes has to do with the entire envelope. Where does that air come from? Through the envelope. How does it get treated once it's in the envelope, et cetera, and so on. So thinking about this, there are bigger motivating factors beyond saving $50 a year because you spent 5,000, right? That is not a compelling discussion. The savings is a little cherry on top, but it also has to do with the education of the professional that's going out and having the conversations with the folks in the house and working up the scope of work, and then implementing on that scope of work in the really terrible conditions that I think most of us have all spent time in nasty places in houses people just don't want to go, crawl spaces, attics, and tight spaces you can barely read your phone, let alone do work, or you get the point. My point is that let's pivot towards the improvements that are more valuable, that people are investing in their home and investing in their lives to get ahead.
Yeah, I will follow up on that, Sean. I approve all the rebates for Platte River, and I've been doing that for 9 years. And I can tell you one thing that is clear. People are not purchasing for ROI. I mean, when I approve a $35,000 HVAC system, what do you think the ROI on that is? That's like 45 years. And that system only has half that life. These customers are buying a relationship. When you said something a while ago, Patricia, you said they call when they think there's something wrong. They call when they're uncomfortable. That room above the garage is hot. The room above the garage is cold. The basement is cold. So, and here is the marriage between that and HVAC. HVAC generally controls comfort with a dry bulb thermostat on the wall. Comfort is not controlled by the dry bulb thermostat. Comfort is controlled by the surface temperature of that house, which is a lot cheaper to impact with insulation and air sealing. So if someone's got an uncomfortable room that you're trying to fix as an HVAC contractor, $5,000 of insulation and air sealing can control those surfaces way better than putting a big heat pump or furnace in there can just add more BTUs. So, go to a passive house, learn what that radiant mean temperature feel is. That's what true comfort is. And that's the reason we fix top plates in Colorado, because the top plates in the summer get too hot and the upstairs is warm. And we're fixing that with closed cell foam insulation. So when we put a thermal camera on it, that temperature is not harder than our body. So it radiates to us like a hot oven door. So you really want the insulation and air sealing team to be in that house if you care about the customer's journey. Once again, we all say we care about the customer's journey. If you want them to be comfortable, it's probably two paths. One could be I just throw a lot of BTUs at it. The other is I improve the envelope and now I can throw less BTUs at it and the customer is still comfortable. So that surface temperature of the house is a big secret a lot of people don't understand, but that's when the comfort really comes around, is because that's what makes you comfort, because there's nowhere for you to lose body heat to that's a different temperature.
Yeah, when I was at Owens Corning and we did research, it was the number one reason was comfort. Like if you want to make the sale, use comfort. I had a sales guy who would go in, to homes, and like he was in one and there was dust everywhere, like not everywhere, but only on like the console where the TV was. And he was like, does this happen a lot? Because you're really clean. Your house is very clean. And the woman was like, yes, I cannot figure out what. And you said, well, if we air seal, and she just to keep that console clean, she said, okay, I'll buy you an incision package. So it's an emotional comfort decision, right? And I think that we forget that. And those are all really good points around that. Any other comments about that?
I just want to follow up on that, Patricia. We had an example of a customer. We were trying to talk into a closed crawl space system where they had an open classic crawl space. It was really dirty. And we went through this whole conversation and, you know, comfort, energy, none of that. But then we mentioned rodents.
Yeah.
And everything flipped upside. Oh, rodents could get in there? Yeah, we'll do it if it's rodent. And it was like you said, go to a sales class. People do not buy with facts. They
Right.
buy with emotion, and
Yeah.
they use facts to back that up. So we go in there as nerds thinking, oh, you want a lower energy bill. We need to be aware that they have a, you know, they could be interested in a lot of things. Like I remember the first time a window job I got finished and the customer was like, I can finally sleep. It's quiet. And I didn't think about the sound as much as I did the comfort, but they wanted it so they could have a good night's sleep. So we all should like take a step back and realize that we all have different reasons for why we want things.
Mhm.
And that sometimes we live in bubbles and we need to like branch out to see what else may be, what is their pain, what is their pleasure. That's the classic sales class. We got to find the pain and say we're going to fix it. And if you don't fix it, this is what's going to happen.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll mention a couple things on this topic. I think there's great value and comfort as you mentioned, Sean, and absolutely that's where we should be focusing. I think we also need to keep in mind it's a pretty small segment of the population that can afford $30,000 cold climate heat pumps, and those that can, that doesn't necessarily mean your bills are going to go down, right? There's a class of users based on our current energy rates for electric and gas, where that capital expenditure might be okay, but the operating cost actually doesn't go down, right? So there's data behind it, and I think there is impact there. And when we think about homes in HERA, who's that targeting? People under a certain AMI level, right? So there's different folks that we need to think about, that yes, they want that comfort. They may not be able to afford it. And when they get that comfort, if they do, there's rebound effects, right? They were keeping their home at 65 degrees and now they're keeping it at 68, 69. So these are all compounding factors, but that's all the more reason to get out of direct sort of data ROI and focus on comfort as I think a main driver. So.
Can I pick up on a piece there, Chris, that you mentioned $30,000 heat pumps? I just want to lay it out on the table. That's not how much the heat pump costs. That's how much a high performance HVAC system costs. Because if it's high performance air conditioning, it's high performance furnace, it's high performance ventilation, etc. It's a different class of equipment, not just where the energy comes in and how it works, but it's a next level piece of equipment. And so when you look at it's the low quality or the old, less efficient heat pumps that everybody recoils against, right? This is what perpetuates the bad stories of, oh, heat pumps don't work in cold climates. No, the right heat pump works in cold climates. The right application of the technology works where we need it, in whether it's in Denver or in the high country, etc. So I think we need to be careful about associating just a heat pump with a high price system, because you can get all sorts of, high AFUE, high SEER, and variable this and modulating that. And that's what is driving a lot of the price. There is a higher price on the equipment, but it's also a trickle up, sort of price modifier, price multiplier that ends up hitting the pocketbooks. And I will also say that once the HVAC industry has more of the technicians, more of the folks that are doing the pricing have turned the corner, that this expensive heat pump piece is going to normalize with gas AC combinations as well. It's just a lot of folks are not comfortable with it. They haven't taken the time to learn about it, but Yeah, I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, and
And
Sean, I threw out the 30,000. That is dual fuel with cold climate
Yeah,
that I'm seeing. So it's just people who can afford that, you know, a bit more than they probably need. But once again, my comment was that it doesn't seem like ROI is what they're chasing, but I will turn it back over to Dan.
yeah, I was just gonna add to this. I'd mentioned this quickly in my PowerPoint. You know, the fact that we can actually, a well-insulated and air-sealed home can get away with a smaller piece of equipment often, and maybe not the piece of equipment with every single bell and whistle imaginable attached to it. So you can be talking about a different range of cost for the equipment side of the solution once the envelope's been well addressed. And while, yes, we don't chase ROI in residential, we do in commercial. We don't chase it so much in residential. It doesn't change the fact that for a percentage of the population, the dollar signs will matter. And so some combination of being effective at reducing upfront costs, as well as being able to potentially show either the same monthly cost, operational cost, or an operational cost benefit over the life of the equipment is still helpful for some homeowners.
It's a great clarification, Dan. You know, ROI is important to, you know, an important segment of the market, particularly in commercial.
Patricia, I'll throw out a phrase that Joe Stiebrick, who owns buildingscience.com, used to say, and it was like, it's really hard to fix a bad building with HVAC, but a really good building can suffer through a bad HVAC.
Yeah.
And I think we're in the first situation where we're always trying to fix a bad building with HVAC. And, you know, it's a challenge. And that's why the envelope is a part of that solution. It's like a three-legged stool. All of us are working together. You know, I've seen customers say, I did all this work in the attic and I'm still uncomfortable, and I'm looking at the glass they didn't replace that's still double pane, non-glare, you know, non-low E. It's a three-legged stool for comfort. I can't fix one thing and expect it to work.
Yeah.
I have to sort of look at the whole system. And that's where the advisor and all of us would do a good job to lay that out. So we're not setting false expectations to that customer. Back to that HVAC 2.0 phrase of let's be the guide and not the hero. Let's let the customer take responsibility on their own by giving them the information so they can make their own decisions.
Hear, hear.
Great points. In that respect, I think talking about the cost, then the utilities are starting to do, I think the financing piece is really important. Talking about that cost. And so Excel's adding, you know, on-bill financing. Tri-State is, I think, Chris, have you been involved with those, haven't you?
Yeah, they're working through that, Tri-State and Excel. Yep.
Yeah, and I think Colorado Springs Utilities is going to start as well.
Yeah, and couple that with the Colorado Clean Energy Fund opportunities, right? I think that's when we talk about holistic building and doing 5 or 6 measures, and maybe that includes solar. That's a lot of money, right? So that low interest financing is huge, and that's what's needed.
It's like if I'm putting 87, you know, make a large investment like that, but then I'm putting $87 a month on my utility bill, it doesn't feel as large. I've got a super low interest rate. I think we have to start thinking about how to make those things happen. And if we had a group of insulation, air sealing contractors, heat pumps, and those energy assessors all working together and having a financing tool, you kind of all have to be working together to pull that off. You do each one individually, but I feel like there has to be some kind of glue and reason for everybody to work together. And I feel like that could be one of them. You know, and then I've heard, like, if you do the financing as well, that you would be able to, I don't know if there's a way for, you know, I'm keep thinking about how do each one of these partners get paid? And like, is it just their job, or is there some type of spiff going on? Is there, if there's financing, can a piece of that be worked into it for the extra kicker for everyone? The utilities, you know, Excel started, you know, this new bonus rebate, and I think that bonus companion rebates is helpful, but those are big ticket items.
Yeah.
Any comments? That, and those are that's my perception. I'm curious if that's the same, or ideas to help them, like what would we talk about if we're gonna partner?
I think that the on-bill financing is important. We definitely have it in Fort Collins, and it's been doing really well there. Customers like that, just paying it on the on-bill. But I think you're right. This collaboration of the 25% bonus, we're doing something similar. We're going to do a bundling rebate at PRPA if you do installation within 6 months of a heat pump or vice versa. Same thing. Boulder did something similar about 3 years ago. It's going to force the collaboration. And when I mean force, what I really mean is there's an opportunity. That's what we're here to talk about. There's an opportunity and there's money to be made. And once again, the current business model has us all in silos to where we're worried about that sale. And I think, and this is proven through with home performance and other things, that when you have the customer educated and we can give them the information in the right sequence, they generally will purchase more. And at the minimum, they're going to be happier because they had control of their journey and they know what they were getting into. But I do think that spiffs could be in the future for handoffs. That's something that I am negotiating right now, trying to figure out, is that something we might do? Because we're serious. We want the collaboration to happen. And this is one of those things where all of us seems like we're always just trying to get a market started. Once this takes off, you will see the value of it, and we won't have to tell you it's valuable anymore because you'll be in a new partnership where you're making some money. And that's, I know what drives this whole process. So we're just, once again, trying to tell you that it can work. It works in other places. We just need to find the right model of how we interact with each other. And there's good synergies to be had.
Yeah, I'll add to that. Referrals by someone who is trusted are the cheapest way to get new work, hands down. Yes, for some that could be on, being on a list that a utility holds, of participating contractors, or the state may hold for the IRA. While that's good, nothing beats a trusted advisor standing in the house telling you Scott's HVAC is who I would go to once you've weatherized the home, because they really understand how to right size equipment. And you just, it's hard to beat that. It's one thing for homeowners when they're playing canasta on Saturday and talking to their friends about what they did in their house. That's great. But when there's a professional in the room who can vouch for you, that's to me the lowest cost way to get more solid leads. And at the end of the day, this is about business. Yeah, we want to do it right. We want to do it in a way that aligns with all of these great goals and takes advantage, but it's about business. So think about it as a business decision.
Yeah, sort of the segue. I don't cover commercial myself, but I do cover multifamily and those kinds of arenas. I think this upcoming year, 2024, is going to be an extraordinarily challenging year on the 25,000 square foot and above buildings in the city and county of Denver. If I understand correctly, half of the benchmarking has been done over the past decade, and there's another half of the benchmarking to be done in 1 year to avoid fines, et cetera, and so on. So making the plan, right? And bear with me for a second. Getting the right professionals in the room to have that conversation, to have that business discussion around it, to share and iterate on that information and how do I do this? And it ties into understanding where you are, aka benchmarking and communication with analysts and folks that understand the building, understanding what it's going to take to fix the building or get you where you, fundamentally where you need to be according to the codes and requirements, in these programs. Otherwise, there will be more pain involved. But then also looking at the opportunities along the way and understanding that, oh, I'm actually almost all the way there and I just need to do a little bit. And now I get to choose which item I'm going to do. Or I've got to take on this big HVAC swap out, for example. But let's think about the specifications. Let's think about the loads on that building that I have to pay a system to handle. And so lowering that load and right sizing and thinking about a cold climate versus a full backup system, for example, right? So this all goes back to the money, to the ROI. And it all lands on proper understanding, proper application, and then thinking about it from a cash flow perspective, right? So the cash flow can handle the needs and upgrades that are going to happen to these buildings as the market all changes at the same time, right? And if you get it done, you have a comfortable, healthy, rentable, fully occupied building, then that is a competitive advantage as well, right? The whole market is changing. The field we're playing on is changing, so understand how to optimize within that rather than let's just say gripe and moan about the fact that the rules just changed. Like the rules have been talked about for the past decade, and now those rules are hitting the field.
Yeah, you can either surf that wave as it comes through, or you can let it crash over you. But either way, it's coming.
Yeah.
And it's proactive is always less stressful.
Agreed.
Anything else on that?
Oh, yeah, just to kind of reiterate on the commercial side and restate what Mac and Sam mentioned earlier with the city of Denver and very good rebate levels that they have can be overlaid with Excel's customer facing program and also Excel's midstream cooling program, which Energy Solutions administers. So if there's questions on that, I'm happy to chat with you about that. But obviously a lot of money on the table on the commercial programs to help hit those benchmarks. So.
Yep. And the last thing I'll add is taking a look back at the last real deep recession we had, starting in, depending where you were at, from 2008 to 2011, the companies that survived well, the HVAC and insulation and construction companies that survived well, were ones that had diversity and flexibility. And these types of things we're talking about, these types of coordination, are a component of doing that. And putting yourself in the best position, you're not just helping future-proof buildings for the building owners and the homeowners, you're future-proofing your business as well. Should there be another deep recession, it's the kind of companies that have that flexibility, that have spread out the kind of work they do and have more connections in industry, particularly in connections to things that people can't pass over, which are emergency replacement. Being connected to companies who do that kind of work can be beneficial for you and help protect you from your own business, your own financial business perspective.
And I'll say that, eventually the word's going to get out to the public about what they should do. And if you're not following that path and you're just giving them a service, but you're ignoring the rest of the services that the rest of us are trying to say is all important, they'll eventually start calling you out like, where's your manual J? Did you have an audit? Are you going to have me do an audit? Meaning, the customers will slowly start showing up a little more educated to where you need to meet their expectations. And that's part of the market. We don't have to convince you heat pumps are good. All I need to do is have someone call you and ask for a heat pump 1,000 times in a month, and you'll start answering that question because that's what the market is. And we're just trying to tell you that's coming. And that education is going to get out there too. So the more that we are all on the same page with like, yeah, you need to do it right. There is a manual J, a manual D that technically we should all follow. I mean, you'll eventually get caught if you're not doing that because the customers will show up educated and they'll, that advisor told me that you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z. When I used to do Energy Star training, we did Dare to Compare. I dare you to compare your home to my Energy Star home. I have a manual J, I have a HERS Raider, have a blower door, have a duct blaster. You don't have any of that. That's why my home costs $2,000 more. There's a differentiating factor.
He's like, yeah, right on. Any other comments on that? Because I have two other things. We are at 9:35. So we actually have 10 minutes. Two things just to plug EEBC, that collaboration that you're talking about, Dan, and the connections, like that's why being an EEBC member is a great place to have that sharing and access to other members who are like-minded, going the direction that we're talking about today. And then also thinking about, this is a question because Chris, we talked about this before. the landscape's changing even more than that, and the value of the metrics that can come from the utilities and from now, because now from the meter, and getting more, I don't know how you explain, like the usage patterns and the usage selling for weatherization approaches that maybe makes it a little less daunting if they know that information is available. And can the insulator, the not the auditor, but the energy analyst, can they pull that into their business?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think we're kind of at the forefront of using real meter data to analyze where we should be targeting some of these projects. I'm not sure right now what Excel's plans are to potentially make meter data available to qualified third parties. What we've seen, some of the work we've done in California with Recurve and some other projects, some other partners, looking at bill impacts prior to a heat pump being installed and afterwards, and seeing some very interesting trends. And to my knowledge, it's the first program to really look at that. This is across 600 homes that have heat pumps installed, and we're about to look at several thousand. So, and I think, what was interesting about that is there was actually summer peak load reduction from people who had ACs already. They just switched from a heat pump to an AC, but the heat pump had a high enough SEER that summer peak load went down, and the winter load went up, of course, because they don't have a furnace anymore, but not enough to offset that load. So some really interesting findings there that I think the utility could benefit from a grid health and stability perspective, to be able to provide that data from the AMI meters, again, through a secure process to qualified third parties. Getting that to the contractor level and having them have that visibility, I think, is a challenge. But that's something we should definitely think about. But it really tells you where the utilities should be targeting their marketing, because there are certain customer segments where we saw significant savings. If you break it up in quartiles by usage, the top quartile just saw over 500 kWh per unit savings in summer peak savings, and that's huge to the utility. But having that granular level of data, I think, is valuable, and it'd be great if Excel could and other utilities in the state could provide that data in a secure way like they do in other states.
So
I was going to add to that real quick. If you think about it from the assessor's perspective, we taught assessors, as early as the 70s and 80s, to do a utility bill analysis, right, for a homeowner. And you can figure out, okay, this is the base load, so this must be your heating and cooling, right? We've now progressed where we have communicating and smart thermostats. And you can begin to add some of that data in. If you can look at the runtime for equipment and look at what the outdoor weather was like at that time, and it's particularly if you're incorporating that with the rest of the energy assessment, you can begin to target, is this home an envelope challenge, or is it an equipment challenged home, or some combination of them? So when we talk about using the AMI meter data, that's just another degree of granularity, as Chris just mentioned, and a degree of how far we can take this and how exciting that side of the industry is to be a part of. Because it's effectively like you're getting better and better tools to do your job and really help homeowners or building owners think through their process. So I do think that there's a future for it, acknowledging that some of the challenges, but just look at the progression where we've been so far. If you're not there yet with communicating and smart thermostats as an assessor, start integrating that data when you can get it, along with utility bill analysis. And it's, again, just adding better and better tools to your tool belt to solve these problems.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it shows the opportunity that's coming and how it's getting maybe more easy to gather that data than being so manual than going through all those bills and then comparing it to the weather, those types of things. So I just thought that was a good note, especially for the energy assessors to think about. We're almost at time, and this has been a great discussion, you guys. I think that a lot to think about, and I'm going to throw out and just want to get your opinion on. I'm thinking we have all these groups in the EEBC and we are all working towards, this direction in the industry. Should we be having some ways to introduce all of our different industry groups to each other, these three? And how do we connect and maybe create some, we have a microcosm that we can utilize, and there we're all working towards things. And that's also looking at what we've been talking about, I think from the action group's perspective and our discussion with Howard and Matt about how we intervene and work, with this Excel. We intervene, but then we are strong partners in implementation in the field and the workforce issues. So question is, should we be connecting our own groups right now to work on this? And then also our action groups look through this lens that we're talking about at the rebates and the new plan, and where are there opportunities to foster this more? Because that's one of the goals that they have, to keep their load down on the grid. Any comments or thoughts about that?
I'll say that I think would be very advantageous to do that. I mean, here we are sitting around talking about how advantageous is it, but to your point, we haven't quite solidified it as a role of the organization. I think it would be a great thing to do. I'm going to emulate what Excel did with Dan just next year with a home performance summit where we're going to bring everybody in the same room, and it's a little bit like speed dating. We're letting everybody meet each other and we're talking about partnerships. And I liked that Ann did some breakout groups with some model homes and how could we fix it? All of that, I think, is what we need to be doing, because we need to we're all in silos. We're all very defensive that we're going to lose our money or our share. And if we could be introduced in a way that we realize it's a bigger group, that we all can make good money together, I think it's got a good future. I'll hush to let other people talk.
And I might have to cut you all off right now. Officially, we'll have our end time and in a couple minutes. If people want to stay on and still chat, you're more than welcome. We don't mind that. We do have time on the clock for us to do that. What we don't want to forget, and that's why I wanted to take an ending. So thank you very much for your insights and all your knowledge and things that you're doing in the field. And we really appreciate it. It was very valuable.
Patricia, we do have a question. This is
Okay.
Deb raising her hand.
Okay.
It's from Ian. And how hard is it to get heating and cooling command data from a smart thermostat? Ecobee, Honeywell, etc. Is there a how-to guide for contractors on how to work with a customer to pull this data from their specific thermostat make model to inform a whole home strategy?
Yes, no answer.
Yes, it's possible. Different brands have different degrees of how helpful they are for their contractors. But yes, it is possible to go through. I would say start with your distributor. They know the ins and outs of what's usually available through the manufacturers.
Real quick, I'll just say it might be better to log into your utility portal, which usually has your usage data on a daily or more granular basis, and pull that information.
Yeah. Yep.
Anything else?
And a home energy monitor that can segment the different circuits can be a great way to go. I've been using one for a few years, and I've identified that in my 100 amp panel home, I have all electric home operation, and I'm not even getting, I'm under 60% of the usage of that 100 amp panel with an all electric home and an EV. So I'm not saying that you don't have to upgrade. I'm saying that understanding a little bit more, digging in, it's possible that you won't have to.
Yeah, and Emporia Energy has been a member of the EEBC, and that's just a shout out as a member product for that. Thank you again. I want to make sure that I have an opportunity to remind everyone that workforce is such a big issue, and Colorado Energy Office is putting a lot of dollars behind helping our contractors with workforce training, but also finding the new to the industry. I think the younger generation, what we're talking about, there's so much fun and opportunity for this new model for them. And so EBC, we have the slide up, the workforce training and hiring pipeline, 2 parts of that. There is the online portion, and that is for the cold climate air source heat pump, but it's still great education for HVAC as well, and any level of those heat pumps that Sean talked about, installation design, science and service and maintenance, and the EPA 608. That is online. It is free. It's through ICAST, a member of the EEBC, and we work closely with them, and want to call that out. That's a great upskilling opportunity for contractors or someone who is wanting to transition to different areas. They also have BPI training. That is a BPI certification of knowledge. It's an introductory BPI course, great for heat pump industry and great for new to industry to understand the home as a system. And then the other exciting piece is adding a hands-on training for heat pumps, which will start in January. Johnstone Supply and has been working on that with us and their manufacturers to pilot an idea that we are going to look to all the distributors so that they can do the same model. It's like heat pump 101, full day, half day, why this industry. Let's talk about heat pump, what goes in it, live, turn on the equipment and actually get to practice. The next day they roll into manufacturer specific training. And the exciting part is having the contractors that are customers of the distributor who will then, we are looking to pull new to the industry students through this process so that they can actually be placed in the contractor's business and do a ride along or shadow day to figure out if they want to hire that individual. So really exciting stuff. If you're interested in getting any of that training or being a contractor who would like to be a part of that hiring pipeline and get this level of trained individuals, call Deb Goodman on the slide. So that's it. We're going to have to wrap up. I am 3 minutes over. Really appreciate our members. You guys make it happen, and you are the first movers in the market and making a difference, and and getting to run some great businesses at the same time. So if you have time and there's anything else that you guys want to ask or discuss, I want to answer the question to the heat pump spreadsheet and the jurisdiction spreadsheet for codes. We do have the links. We will include that. We'll be sending out the recording and all the PowerPoints to everyone afterwards, and we'll include some of those answers into the chat. Anything else before we go?
Thanks for all the hard work you're doing, Patricia.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the team and our board. Yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Rock star.
Thanks for the thumbs up, Jason. All right. Anything else, you guys, before we go? We'll hang out as everybody. And happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Seeing you in January.